This
Well, we'll do
conference will now be recorded.
It is now 12:30, and we'll get started here. I want to thank all of you for joining us today for our caucus. This is so I will start the meeting. This is the Metropolitan Water District Representative Caucus and the special board meeting of West Bay Municipal Water District. It is now 12:30 on my clock. So with that, we will come to order, and I'll prove it. Here you go. It's a gavel. And to the Mr. Shields, General Manager, West Basin, do we have any public comments?
No. Good afternoon, President Williams. President Pete Williams, we do not have, and welcome as this is your first caucus as the newly elected president of West Basin Board, and welcome to our guests and the rest of the board members. We do not have any public comment. No.
Well, with that, then we'll move to the main reason why we are here. Item number 3, discussion items, and we'll hear from
Yes.
a very distinguished Jeff Keidlinger, General Manager of Metropolitan Water District.
Yeah, Jeff, can you take it away?
Well, thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Chair Williams. Can you guys hear me fine?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. After talking over with Patrick, we thought I'd cover a few things on our agenda. I think most people want to hear what status and update on our rate refinement process, and I'm being joined by Katano Kasane, so our CFO. So I'll have her cover that when it comes up on the agenda. A couple of items I want to bring to your attention. We're having a report at one of our committees on COVID and health and safety issues. So staff asked me what that was about. So we have undertaken an upgrade of our entire health and safety program, even during this shutdown. Very pleased with it. We have always been below industry standards in terms of accidents and time off work, but it's actually better than it's ever been, which is intriguing during COVID. And it's a lot of it has to do, I think, with a lot of really heightened attention to health and safety issues. And so we're going to walk the committee through a number of the specifics that we've done and actions that we've taken to improve health and safety in the field, and to really emphasize all the standing committees we've put together across the district to really focus on safety issues and that work. While I'm at it, I'll give a quick update on Metropolitan's experience with COVID-19. And, we've obviously just gone through, seems like we're starting to flatten out a bit, but gone through a pretty significant surge in Southern California. Well, pretty much all of California. At the end of September, Metropolitan had a total of 9 total cumulative cases. We'd only had 9 employees throughout Metropolitan that had contracted COVID. And then in the last 90 days, that was the first 6 months, 180 days. The last 90 days, we're now at about 120 employees. So reflective of Southern California, we just went straight up. With a huge amount of infections and cases throughout Metropolitan. As it's managed through it, it's never been more than about a dozen to 20 employees out at any one time. We've been able to manage through it and keep everything going. We've had our micro teams in the field, so whenever there was an employee that was impacted, we didn't impact that many employees. In fact, employee to employee transmissions, we think is 7. Out of that 120 employees. The other 100 and plus cases were all contracted out in the community away from Metropolitan work. And that's enabled us to keep everything functioning. All the treatment plants, all the pumping plants, all district facilities have been fine and up and running. And then all the support work, finance, legal, engineering, design, all that has been pretty much seamlessly carried on through telecommuting. So we're going to be updating the board on that By and large, though, pretty manageable. No more than about 20 employees out at any one given time. In an organization of our size with 1,800 employees, we can manage that, and we have enough staff that we can cover all facilities and keep everything operational, which we've managed to do. A little more difficult for some of our member agencies because they basically, with smaller staffing, are kind of at a micro team already. And we have been working with some of our member agencies when they lose staff. Can we step in and help facilitate them keep up and operating? A couple items on our agenda I thought I'd mention real quickly. We have a couple of stormwater pilot projects that we're bringing to the board for approval. We're trying to really focus on how do we measure stormwater capture and how do you really certify and measure that and really the metrics of that, and to see if it's something that could be scaled at a larger scale throughout Southern California, if it could really be turned into a local resources program. So we have two pilot projects that we're bringing forward. One's fairly local. It's in the city of Bell Gardens. We're working with Central Basin on that one. And the other is out in Western Riverside County. And so the board will be taking those up. We have a couple items also. One is related to state water project contract amendments. We've been briefing our board on that. We've been negotiating for some time with the other state water contractors how to be more flexible in how we treat our state water project supply, our Table A allocations. In the past, you can only do short-term transfers of 1 year to 2 years of that. We're basically now adding, you can do long-term transfers. You don't have to sell your Table A. You can move it around from agency to agency. That flexibility is something that a number of the contractors really wanted to do, that have that flexibility to help pursue Delta conveyance and the costs of that. So those amendments now have been finalized, and we're bringing those forward for approval. And basically, they added flexibility to all the contractors and how to manage their supply. So that's a positive. And then the final action item we're bringing to the board is, as you're probably aware, this year started out very slow in terms of storms and supply. Colorado River is well below average, and Northern California was extremely below average. In fact, we are still at a 10% allocation. So the State Water Project has had 3 years at 20%, 1 year at 5%. Those are the 4 lowest years in its history. 10% at this late date is one of the lowest that I've seen. But we did just have some recent storms, so there's a reasonable chance it'll tick up a little bit, but it likely will end up as a dry year. With that, whenever we have a dry year on the state project side, the state water project contractors get together, create a pool to look at potential transfers. And part of that pool effort and looking at what are water transfers, we usually put up a down payment just to see who's serious about getting involved in this of $5 an acre foot. And if you don't pursue a transfer, you typically get back about 90% of that money committed. There are some administrative fees that DWR withholds from that. So it's a fairly low risk proposition at this point. So we're going to ask the board to authorize putting up $500,000, $500,000, which is the $5 an acre foot, for a potential 100,000 acre foot purchase. Now we have very good reserves in place. In fact, we have the highest amount of water and storage than we've ever had in Metropolitan's history. So we don't expect to use this, and we probably won't even pursue a transfer, but it's sort of a no harm option. And so we're basically asking the board, let's exercise the option, see what the market looks like, see what the weather looks like as we get to March, April timeframe, and then we can come back for a decision at that point. So that's the other action item on the agenda. The one thing I also wanted to mention is it was on the agenda and we pulled it off, and I've had a couple questions from board members about it, and it was about potentially co-sponsoring a bill with the San Diego County Water Authority on financial COVID relief. There was at Congress in December, they passed the Consolidated Appropriations Act, and that authorized $638 million for grants to states and tribes to carry out a low-income household drinking water and wastewater emergency assistance program. And the idea is to get, with the assumption that a lot of people financially can't pay their utility bills, this was going to be a help that Congress was authorizing to utilities. California likely get about 10% of that, so in the range of $66 million. And the Water Authority was looking at putting a bill that would help their sub-agencies, their member agencies, get access to some of that funding and how it would streamline that. And our staff was looking at it, and we were asked if we'd co-sponsor it. But their targeted author, Lorena Gonzalez, Assemblymember Gonzalez, has declined to carry the bill going forward. So we took it off our agenda since the bill was not moving. State Senator Dodd is looking at, he's from Napa Valley. He's carrying a couple of COVID water relief bills in the Senate. And so how that money is going to be managed will be pursuant to those bills. So we're going to be tracking it and working with our member agencies to see if sub-agencies here at Metropolitan Retail at the retail level are going to be eligible for any of that funding. So we'll be tracking that. Our understanding is that Assemblymember Gonzalez has put on the table a willingness to write a letter to the state on behalf of water agencies, urging that through the budget process, urging that money be sped up and moved to retail level agencies. And so we'll be monitoring that letter and providing input to that. And with that, I would turn it over to Catano to give an update on the rate refinement process, unless there's any questions.
Okay, any questions out there at this point? Hearing none. Catano?
So I realized that I'm item number 4, so I'm happy to go now.
Oh, you're item number 4?
It looks like I'm listed as item number 4.
Okay, then.
But I'm happy to do it.
You can go now, please.
Okay,
Yep,
thank you.
That's fine.
So thank you. So I don't really have a lot to report today, but I wanted to highlight where we are. The last time we were at the board around December, I believe. And at that time, we wanted to introduce the topic of rate refinement and where we were going and what we're doing. Since then, we met with the working group. So we do have a working group, and we report to the managers monthly and hopefully report to finance as needed. So we did meet with a working group January 13th. We plan on meeting with them tomorrow. And the topic so far is really about providing background on rate refinement and charges for those folks who are new and are still learning the process. And there are people who also want to just go back and start where we left this topic a couple years ago. I think a year and a half ago now. So we went and discussed that last time, and tomorrow we will repeat the same process. And mainly, the group wants to understand where we're going with demand management and cost recovery first, and then talk about the rate refinement structure and principles. We will bring this to the board to give us maybe further clarity on whether there are key topics that the board would like to discuss beyond the demand management and cost recovery. There is a list that we had established. Staff added a couple things, and since then, we've had a couple board members add a few things to that list. Now, this list, you will see next week, is just a list that has not been prioritized. We believe that for that list to be effective and for us to actually understand what we're talking about, we need to define the issues outside of demand management. We do need to define the key issues pertaining to each item on that list, and then go forward and prioritize what to be discussed. So we are just starting. We have not really had an opportunity to work on anything other than presenting and giving people the opportunity to understand where we are and where we're going. We believe this process will take us almost the rest of the year. We do need, however, to get demand management cost function identified and approved by the board, because next budget, which we will start talking about next budget, September, we need to be able to have a way of collecting for demand management. As you all know, that we're using current reserves to manage those programs, and we have, I believe, at least $500 million of contracts that we have to fund eventually. So we do need to find a way to collect demand management. So that will be our priority. And beyond that is really working through the rest of the items and see if there are other concerns or issues we need to address. So I don't have a lot, to be honest with you. This is exactly what I'll be telling the board, because it is too early for us to actually have a lot for the board to chew on, unless the board give us a different direction on Tuesday.
Okay, well, thank you for that. But back to Jeff. I want to the audience out there, my computer's telling me that we have 40 people on this call. And you're going to tell me that there's no one out there with a question for Jeff. If you don't come tell us or ask a question, I don't know if we should have this meeting anymore. So is there anybody out there who's dying to ask Jeff Keitlinger a question?
Yeah, Director Williams, I have a question for Jeff. Jeff, when are you going to retire? No, that's not the question, but we know that's upcoming. But I would like to see if Jeff has any update on the IRP. I know that's in process and it's particularly updated, but it's certainly a question that I get from a lot of people. Where are we at and what's the next steps?
Very good. I don't see Devin Upadhyay on the phone, so I'll just go ahead and get started on that. The IRP process has been going on now. It's we're closing in on 9 months. Actually closing in closer on a year. And that's our goal, is to always wrap it up within a calendar year. So we're running a little bit into overtime on that. And I think some of it is because we took a slightly different approach this year. You always look at scenarios. You look at your demands, you work with your member agencies, and you try and make your projections and predictions, and then you conduct a gap analysis of what's the gap between our current supplies and our projected demands, and how do we manage that? What's the risk we're willing to accept, and what are the targets? And it's a usually fairly straightforward process. This year, staff, after working with Rand and some folks at UCLA, wanted to do a more robust planning process called scenario planning, which takes into account multiple futures as opposed to one projected future, with then multiple solutions building off the multiple futures. And it's more how the planning is being done in the business world and other areas. And it really was trying to get us to a more sophisticated planning effort. And it took, I think, a little more time than to get the board. We had to spend a number of months just looking at planning methodology versus actually getting into the data and the numbers. But we're now pretty well heavily enmeshed in the data and numbers. We're getting some input from the member agencies and the board on some of the planning features they'd like to see added to the process. And I think we're kind of in that final stretch. I think we can wrap this up by over the next 4 months, and then finalize the product. And so my hope is that we can do that. That'll have been 1.5 years. Considering that we update it every 5 years, it's not going to be terribly useful if we spend 2.5 years doing this. It's sort of like you never get out of planning mode. And so we do need to wrap this up and clean it up and get it done. And I think we're on track to do that. A lot of kudos to Directors Pressman and De Jesus. They've really kind of kept this moving forward in a positive direction. And I think we're now into the details and getting input from the member agencies on some of the details. And I think that'll wrap itself up fairly shortly. So don't know if you had any other specifics on that, Patrick.
No, that's
Yeah, go on.
very helpful.
And the only thing I might mention is that we do have a couple of new board members coming on at the February meeting. Tony Fellow, who spent a long time on Metropolitan's board, has been reappointed from Upper San Gabriel Valley, MWD, and Ty Fan has been appointed from the city of Santa Ana. So they'll be coming on in February, and we expect to get a couple more directors, 2 or 3 more at March. So a little bit of a turnover on our board, but those are new directors that are coming in. That's all I really see on our agenda coming up. Again, unless there's more questions, Chair Williams.
Yes, I have a question, Jeff. And this has to do with the regional recycling facility that is proposed in Carson.
Yes.
And I just want to ask, what about your agencies or members of Metropolitan who also are pursuing water recycling plants and putting quite a bit of money in that direction? The plant that is coming, the regional water recycling plant, seems to be large enough to take care of recycling for our, at least for the 2 basins that I'm concerned about, Central Basin and West Basin. So I was just wondering if those agencies that are pursuing water recycling plants, that are their quality of water will be at the level just a little bit above tertiary, that it should, and it takes a long time to get these projects up and going. And with the support that is seemingly great out there for the water recycling plant that Metropolitan and LA San are doing, that there's an awful lot of support for that. So much support that it seems like any other efforts to bring another water out there would be futile. And I was just wondering, what is the timing you think is on the regional water recycling plant coming on board?
Well, thank you, Chair Williams. Yes, Metropolitan took some important actions on advancing our regional recycled water project at the November and December meetings. And I was very pleased to see the board passed unanimously the funding for us to do the environmental review. So you're aware we built and are currently operating the pilot demonstration facility. And we built that first, and that was about $15 million effort. And then in November, we went to our board and got approval to spend $30 million on the next phase of it, which is to complete the environmental review documentation and design and engineering planning to build the full project, which would then come back to our board in the 2023-24, probably 24 timeframe. So it's about a 3-year process we envision, getting through all the programmatic environmental review for that and the advanced engineering and design work to go build that. Then the board would be faced with the go, no-go decision on that project. You're right, there's a number of recycled water projects being simultaneously pursued throughout Southern California. Metropolitan is cooperating and working with the agencies on that. Relatively close to this project, which is in the city of Carson, at the LA County Sanitation District's facility, is the City of Los Angeles Hyperion Treatment Plant down by El Segundo in LA. And that project also is another large-scale recycled water project. Probably, again, coming online, projected to come online in the early 2030s, just like Metropolitan's. And then City of San Diego is pursuing a program that they call Pure Water at their Point Loma plant. And that is also another very large scale recycled. So you have 3 large ones. and then a number of smaller ones being pursued throughout Southern California. So a lot of work in pursuit of recycled water. But we were very pleased with the board support on working with LA County sanitation districts, metropolitans, and we're excited that we're now started that environmental review and design process. And we're hoping to move that along in a timely manner and get to a decision point in 2024. And then we project about an 8-year to get it online process. So in the early 2030s, we expect to have that project up and running and on board.
So it takes a while.
It does take a while, and it's going to be very critical that we coordinate very closely throughout Southern California on these projects. We don't want multiple projects sort of overlapping. You know, we have to make sure that they really have distinct areas and that they're servicing and that they complement each other so that we're not spending ratepayer money in duplicative ways. We have to ensure that all these projects complement each other and work well together so that we have a seamless match of our imported supplies, our recycled supplies, and what other local supplies that we all bring online.
Well, we get a lot of one of the questions we get from our ratepayers or constituents is why do these projects take so long to complete, and why do they always cost more than the original estimate?
They don't always cost more. I do remind people of that. We, Metropolitan managed to bring on time Diamond Valley Lake, a $2.1 billion project and on budget. The inland feeder finished on budget. That was a $1.1 billion pipeline project. So they don't always cost more, but they always do take a while. The fastest project I ever saw from inception to being online of a real good scale was probably Diamond Valley Lake. That was 10 years from planning to actually starting to fill that reservoir. But we were lucky in the sense and good in the sense that we got a lot of community support. We had zero litigation trying to stop or slow down the project. So we really managed that project very seamlessly. It's a challenge. California is a hard place to build anything, and nothing moves that quickly. And so you have to stick to it.
Yeah, I agree and understand that. Now, would you say that these small regional projects, since they're not as large as Metropolitan and LA's regional water project is, that that we should continue working on those small projects because they move a little quicker than a large regional project.
Yes, and I do think there's a real spot for those. Some of these are called scalper projects. Some of them are built upstream of the large treatment plants, and they can move quicker, and they're more targeted and less likely to engender local opposition often. The trade-offs is they don't have the economies of scale. And so the unit prices are often pretty expensive. Some of these smaller projects, the unit price can be over $3,000 an acre foot for some of these recycled water projects. Whereas when you get into the large scale projects like, the regional recycled water project, Hyperion, and others, you can probably get the unit cost down to under $2,000 an acre foot. So that's some of the trade-offs that you have.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you for
Thank you, Jeff.
Anyone else?
Jeff, this is Pierce.
Here? You're on.
Right, Jeff?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Following up on that question, wouldn't it, in your mind, be wise to set up a sort of a group of the managers like in LA, San Diego, Orange County, and Met to kind of phase in these projects and to address the issues that Harold just brought up and phase them in a way that, just like 500,000 or 600,000 acre feet of water being contemplated, and reasonably flat demand, and the highest, storage in the Met's history. This seems like we're just going to strand assets left and right if we don't really address that. If we don't address maybe a phased local project, deal with that Met continues. We're going to be spending, it seems like we're going to be spending money willy-nilly without really any driving need.
Well, I think that's a very good question, Pierre. And I do think that's part of what, some of that analysis should come through the IRP process. We do have 3 or 4 years worth of environmental review at Metropolitan on the regional recycle project. I don't believe City of Los Angeles has started their environmental review yet. So that's another 3-4 years at Hyperion. So we do have some time before decisions are made. And I do think, over the next few years, we're going to have to really watch regional demands, what's going to happen with growth in Southern California, and what is the need for what level of project. Just like we're also going to have to track what are the long-term impacts of climate change, occurring up in Northern California, Owens Valley, and the Colorado River Rocky Mountains, and the need for buffer supplies here. So that is going to take a lot of careful analysis. And you're right, the last thing we want to do is to have several $1 billion worth of semi-stranded assets. We don't want to pull in Australia like they did with desal. We want to bring these on in a reasonably timely manner and as needed, but also, as President Williams pointed out, when they take 10 years, 12 years to build and construct and get online, you got a pretty long-term planning horizon. And so you can't wait till the last minute either. So it requires a lot of careful thought and analysis. And that's what needs to occur over the next few years as we do the environmental review.
But if you have all this political momentum and all these people posturing politically about projects they want to do, and it's like LA, passed a tax message, measure in order to finance some of these very expensive projects. If you don't phase it or get an agreement here pretty soon, it's going to be working on its own. It would be very hard to stop. The other thing I wanted to ask is, would it be advisable to set up an agreement with people like Las Vegas and other interested parties to do a similar thing, with some of these local projects that was contemplated in the Carson plant? Have an offset. They would pay as much money as the cost over Met's current rate, subsidize it so the partners would be indifferent, and do that in some sort of a phased way?
Well, I think that's the future. And we are going to have to really look at assets across a regional level. The only way I think to manage the long-term impacts of climate change on the Rocky Mountains is to look wider and broader, and as a broader region. I was very pleased that the board authorized the next step in the partnership with Southern Nevada at our December board meeting on the Carson plant. And I think that is the future, and that is something that I think the next group of general managers and boards are going to have to start really, really focusing on. How do we manage things from a larger regional basis? How do we deal with these long-term impacts of climate change? And how do we phase projects like that and partner them and get the right partnerships? And, I think your comments are spot on. That's the analysis that's got to take place over the next few years.
A year ago, Devin and the LA City Groundwater Replenishment District, LA County, were all in a presentation together with 5 different projects, a couple 100,000, probably 400,000 acre feet in total in that. And Marty was there, and I sort of pitched that, gee, you guys got to form, the 5 of you got to form a committee to phase this because the politics are driving this. And you have big politicians, like from the Valley who want zero discharge. And then you have other ones who want to capture all the rainwater. And then you have other ones, I mean, they've made political commitments to do this. And in some cases, got the financing approved. So I'm concerned about that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions out there? Okay, then we'll bring on EJ. This would be under discussion items. This would be B. EJ, are you there?
I am.
Oh, there you are.
Thank you very much, President Williams, members of the board, and guests. We are almost there to February 19th, our deadline for bill introductions in the California State Legislature. That deadline is going to be a great opportunity for us to kind of sort through all the bills that have been introduced and kind of assess what type of session that we're going to see this year. As we've discussed previously, we do expect some disruptions and kind of a alternative schedule over the long run due to COVID-19. We'll keep our fingers crossed for a smooth process, but having witnessed last year, we know that we're going to have to kind of roll with the changes as they come. But I did want to introduce the topic of several bills that have been introduced already. Again, this is kind of shows you the type of session that we're going to have and the matters and issues that we're going to see addressed. The first of which is Senate Bill 45. We've talked a little bit about this. This is the ongoing discussion related to a resiliency bond. Our understanding of those discussions is that while introduced this year in 2021, this is going to be part of a multi-year discussion. So I've heard that the author intends to hold its initial hearings, but we would expect that this bill would be introduced, or excuse me, possibly passed in 2022 for a future ballot. So we're going to continue to work on it, make sure that we're engaged, but I think that this is going to be a long road ahead, so you'll want to stay involved. Secondly, and I'm going to try to group these as far as the discussion goes. We're seeing a handful of bills related to safety in the workplace. Senate Bill 46 by Senator Stern, one of our legislators, has legislation related contact tracing and safety in the workplace. You also see AB 55, I believe that's by Assemblymember Horvath, related to telecommuting and employment opportunities. Again, this is related to potential safety measures, allowing for workers to continue to work through telecommuting in the future. I think Jeff mentioned this briefly when we talked a little bit about Senator Dodd, but he does have a handful of bills related to energy and water. I thought I would mention them very quickly. There's Senate Bill 52 related to the state of emergency and planned power outages. Senate Bill 222 related to water affordability assistance program. Again, you've seen Metropolitan Water District take action on this related to its member agencies if they needed to defer their payments to Metropolitan Water District, and allowing for that process to kind of play out as far as a prorated safety net. The state is looking to do the same thing. Senate Bill 223 related to the disconnection or discontinuation of residential services. Again, you've seen in the past, the California State Legislature acted to prohibit certain water retailers from disconnections in the residential sector due to non-payment. This would actually extend that period of a moratorium on those disconnections. So you want to take a look at that for those of you who are working with retailers or working for retailers. And then last but not least, I want to mention this. There is a constitutional amendment bill, ACA 1, and I wanted to mention this because this is the little bill that could. It's related to local government financing, specifically affordable housing and infrastructure. West Basin sponsored legislation similar to this several years ago, I think 6 years ago, and it would allow for local governments to pursue bond measures and bond indebtedness for a lower vote threshold of 55% rather than than that 2/3 electorate requirement. Again, it would place very specific provisions related to local governments that would pursue this. But it's kind of exciting to see that the bill continues to get introduced. I would expect potentially that there could be further discussions this year on this bill. Again, it would require a 2/3 majority in the California State Legislature, and then of course need to be placed on a statewide ballot, but we will continue to track it. Again, that bill is ACA 1. And with that, Mr. President, that's all I have unless you have any questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are you seeing any bills that are pending or that have been introduced that would protect agencies from liability in the event that employees are claiming that they became sick in the workplace?
I know that that discussion has taken place on the federal level, and we did see federal legislation, or at least the discussion of including it in some of those COVID packages that were handled under the previous administration. Obviously, this administration is currently working on a multi-trillion-dollar COVID package, so you could see it there. I haven't seen too much of that on the California State Legislative side. Again, looking at the California State Legislature and the makeup of that, they typically side on behalf of employees. But we will continue to look at that. As I mentioned, the deadline for legislation to be introduced is February 19th. And so we'll be doing a pretty steep analysis of all of the bills that get introduced. So you may want to attend our future Water Policy and Legislation Committee, where we might go into that a little bit more in depth. But I have not seen it yet in the state legislature.
Thank you.
Next. Did I hear? Anyone else? God, you're letting these guys off easy today. All right. We will not receive or take any complaints about not knowing what Metropolitan is doing or the state legislation. All right. Our next item would be looking at the agenda, item 4 would be MWD other matters. And I think that was covered by Katana earlier.
That's correct.
That's what's next. Is that correct?
Yeah, Katana's already covered item 4A.
Okay. So then that takes us to MWD consent calendar action items. So I tell you what, on all this, what's remaining is about MWD other board items action, and then number 7, MWD board information items, and then 8 pending items. All of this can be found on Metropolitan's website, and you can go there and get more information on that. So that's, we don't need to cover that here, I don't think, unless someone wants to speak to items 5 through 10 or 9.
Yeah, I would say, President Williams, that the things we needed to cover under those have already been covered under 3 and 4. So all of those items are already covered through number 9.
Okay, with any questions? Hearing none, I will declare this meeting adjourned.